The Super Nintendo has a great library of over 700 games, and a lot of those games are quality titles. But the library could have been even bigger and better if these games weren't canceled. Today I'm taking a look at some games that were in development but canceled for various reasons on the Super NES. Rayman. Rayman was originally being developed for the Super NES CD-ROM. When Sony and Nintendo couldn't work together to get that console off the ground, Ubisoft decided to focus on getting that game on CD-based consoles that could handle the advanced graphics. There are versions of Rayman available for the Jaguar, PlayStation, and Saturn, but the Super NES prototype was so far along in development that it's actually playable. In 2017, Omar Cornut and original designer Michael Ansel released an early prototype ROM of the game. Killer Instinct 2. The original Killer Instinct on Super NES was a popular fighting game at the time. An arcade sequel was planned and released in 1996. There were plans of a Super Nintendo port being released, but focus was put onto Killer Instinct Gold for the N64 instead. Because at the time the Super NES was an older console, plans were scrapped for the Super NES version of Killer Instinct 2. The Super NES version of the game was completed but never released. Star Fox 2. The original Star Fox on the Super NES was so popular that once word that a sequel was being made hit the street, the news was extremely covered by magazines at the time. A playable version of the game was even available at CES in 1995. Because the N64 was being released shortly after development, Nintendo decided to cancel Star Fox 2 and focus on the new console. This story, however, does have a happy ending. In 2017, 21 years after its intended release, Star Fox 2 was made available on the Super NES Classic as an unlockable game. Road Rash. When I was younger, I'd go over to my friend's house to play his Sega Genesis. One of my favorite games to play on it, besides Sonic, was called Road Rash. Speed down the road on a motorcycle while trying to knock opponents off their vehicles with weapons and by punching and kicking them. I later found out that THQ was working on a Super NES version of Road Rash in 1996, however it was cancelled due to declining sales. Pugsy. This fun puzzle platform game was made for the Mega Drive, Mega CD, and Amiga. Make your way through 57 levels while collecting helpful objects to progress to your goal and move further along in the game. Almost looking like a Hershey Kiss, Pugsy may not be the most handsome character, but the game does have a certain charm. A Super NES version of the game was being developed, but unfortunately never saw the light of day. The Simpsons. As a bonus, I'm throwing in the Simpsons arcade game, which was never actually in development for the Super NES, but is one of my favorite arcade games of all time. I would have loved to see a port of this on the Super NES. Even if it was a really stripped down version of the game, it would have made me really happy to play this at my house.